Hi guys, this is Nadia from Imbali Crafts, and today I want to show you how to create a starburst pendant using a glass crystal. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button because I upload new stuff on a regular basis. I quite often make kits and PDF tutorials for the videos I put up on here, and I'll pop a link in the description below. I also have all sorts of gemstones, square and half round wire, some beads, and all sorts of other goodies on my website. So take a gander over and see if there's anything you fancy. Last but not least, come and join us in our wire wrappers and metalsmiths group on Facebook. I'll also pop a link below. Right, let's get started. Right, so we've got a 40 centimeter piece of 0.8 22 gauge wire, and we're going to create a prong setting with that. So the way I do this, I have a different video that I'm going to link in the comments. I'm just going to go through this really quickly to try and keep the videos short. But the way I do the prong setting is I like to use my flat nose pliers because they help me with spacing. So I kind of start in the middle, and I fold this over, and then I very carefully, don't want these to overlap, squash these over, and you take your stone, and you don't really want these to be too long, because half the time then the prongs will kind of fold over the stone and go onto the table, which doesn't look very nice. You really want to have the prongs kind of sitting on the sides, or to have the maximum area of the stone showing. So I like to have just a grip onto the side here, and then I fold these over, and I want the sort of teeth, or the prongs rather, to run just underneath the rim of the stone. So I'm going to make these prongs roughly about 5 millimeters long, just about that. And again, you can use a pair of pliers. I think these ones may be just perfect for that. So I'm going to use my flat nose pliers as a reference. It works quite well because they obviously same size all along, and then you kind of grab your pliers and you fold the wire and put a 90-degree bend in it, like so. And we're going to be doing the same on the other side, and try not to sort of overlap the wire too much. So bend it that way. And we're going to use, again, for spacing, you can use your flat nose pliers again. I mean, obviously it depends on the size of the stone. You need to adjust this. If your stone's bigger, smaller, has a larger sort of girdle, you need to adjust these settings or these sort of measurements. And I'm just going to use this again as a marker. You can also use a pair of chain nose pliers and mark with a marker pen on the side here, so that you use the same section of the pliers each time. So that would be another option if you don't have flat nose pliers. That works. And we're just going to be repeating this until we have enough. So I'm going to do this. So to line up, you can kind of mark the wire if you want to, but I generally just go by look. You kind of get a feel after a while how you can fold the wire so that they line up. So I kind of look and fold these over, and I pull it down. And bear in mind that when you are squashing this down, it'll lose some of the length as well, depending which direction you go. It's a bit too long, so I'm going to open this up a bit. A bit more. I'm just going to pull it a little bit tighter to make sure I bring it down. So when you squash it down now, you kind of squash it going downwards so that the wire kind of rolls down. I hope that makes sense. Kind of rolls down. And it's still too long. So if that's the case, if it's still too long, what you can do, if you don't mind the gap in between, when it's only just the first one, you can make the gap in between bigger. It's kind of doable at this stage, like so. So just make the gap in between bigger, and you can see now I've made this bigger, and the prongs are now roughly the same. It doesn't work when you've already got a few, only works with the first one and before you've also folded up the second wire. So now we've got this, I've got the gap a little bit bigger. So now I'm going to continue. Obviously you need to adjust all the gaps to be the same in between. All right, so we've got all of these and we're going to carry on until we've got enough. So I've created my prongs and I've only made 5 because I don't really want the prongs to reach all the way up to the stone. So I've made 5 and that should roughly stop the prongs here. And what we're going to do next is adding some weaving wire. So I've cut also well, we're going to add in some base wires, but I've also cut my weaving wire, which is about 1.5 meters in length. I'm not sure what that is in inches. And we're going to set aside 2/3 of the wire to the right, which is my weaving direction. So if you're left-handed, you do it the other way around. And we're just going to attach this wire with 2 or 3 wraps to the first base wire, which is the inside wire where our stone is going to be sitting on. So next we're going to attach the prong. So we're going to go around that, bring it in. So just wrap it once around. We're going to call this wire 1 and 2. And now I'm going to bring in wire 3. I'm going to slide this in. We're going with the weaving wire. I'm going to call this wire 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to go around wire 1 and 2, come in between we're going to go around wire 2 and 3, and we're coming back in between wire 1 and 2. So once we've done that, just make a bit of space. Going to bring in wire 4, slide it in, and we're going to go around wire 2, 3, and going to go around wire 2, 3, and 4. Goodness me. And bring it back in between wire 1 and 2, and we're going to bring in wire 5, slide it in, and this time we're going to go around all 4 wires, and now we're going to travel back, which means bring your weaving wire back in wire 1 and 2, wrap it around wire 2, 3, and 4, like so. Bring it back in between wire 1 and 2, wrap it around wire 1 and 2 and 3, and then we are going to wrap it around wire 1 and 2, like so. And then we're going to be pushing this up, and this is sort of the first instance of the weave. So now we're going to repeat exactly the same process in between the prongs. Now obviously the gap in between the prongs depends on the type of design, the weaving wire thickness, and so forth. I generally try to fit one sort of star or ray in between one prong, but it's not always necessary. So in that case, you can forego the wrap around wire 1 and 2, which I'm going to put in. We've got enough space to do this for this instance in each of the sections. But if you don't have enough space, it's enough to do it at the beginning before each prong, before each new section, and that's enough to actually hold the wires together. In this case, we do have space, so we're just going to go ahead and repeat the process. So once again, we now wrap around wire 2 and 3 in one go, bring it back in between wire 1 and 2, wrap around wire 2, 3, and 4, bring the wire back in between wire 1 and 2, and wrap it around wire 2, 3, 4, and 5. And again, bring it in, and now we're just going to come back just like we did in the first instance, and we're going to continue this until we're finished and we have one ray on the outside of this section here. All right, so I finished these, and quite often when you have finished these, it's quite helpful to come in with a pair of flat nose pliers or chain nose pliers, and I like to squish them down a little bit, and this will sort of even out the weave a little bit and make them more visible as it separates all the weaving wires out and flattens them. So that's what it looks like. And then the next step is to do the prongs. All right, so to do the prongs, I like to come in again with my flat nose pliers and try to hold each so that I have a bit more grip. And then I tend to take the tip. Actually, there's not enough space for these because they're quite thin. Come in with this. And you really just want to bend over the tip because the length of the bend dictates how much of the prong actually sits over the stone. So you don't want too much of it be bent over, too much of the bent area to sit over the stone. You can bend this straight later, but you kind of get the gist. So try and give it a sort of, it's not quite a 90-degree angle, but close. So we're going to be doing the same for all of these, and then we're going to shape this around a stone. All right, so I've bent these up and I've flattened these out, and you can see that they're kind of upright again. And then what we're going to do next is just remove 3 of the wires. We're just going to keep 2 of them. There we go. So we kind of got the setup now, and now it's quite nice and easy to fold this around. And you've got a little ledge with the inside wire that gives the stone or cubic zirconia or crystal, whatever you're using, something to sit on. Like that. Just kind of fold it in. And just kind of check for fit. Bring the stone and kind of feed it in and just see what it looks like and see how the prongs are sitting. There we go. So that's kind of what it looks like. You can see that the prongs aren't too big to actually cover much of the stone, which is enough, but it was still enough to hold them in place. So that's all you really want. And I didn't want to go all the way around the stone because I'm going to do a different kind of design with that. So quite happy with that. And now we're going to be tying this in place. All right, so once you're happy with the fit like that, what we're going to do is we're going to close this off at the top. So quite happy with that. So we're going to use the 2 innermost wires to close it off. So we're going to remove this, and all we're going to do is kind of bring this in. You want to make sure that each side is kind of symmetrical like that. And we're going to close this off, and we're going to use either one of the weaving wires to kind of, you can actually bring this up until it meets. I'm just going to quickly do that. Obviously do the same amount of revolutions on the other side, and then what we're going to do is just bring in a weaving wire. I'm going to go around both of them, so pull this together, and in actual fact we're just going to do one wrap first around the outside wire like so. Just bend this out of the way, and then we're going to go around both, around the upper wire, come down around both, around the lower wire, and then we're going to keep doing this until we've got about 6 or so sets, and that's enough. So that's kind of what it looks like. You can push this down until it's neat and tidy, and that's what it looks like so far. So once you're happy with the design, I'm just going to slot the stone in. Like that. You can see the prongs are nicely just on the outside of the stone. That's actually enough to keep the stone in place. And what we're going to do is just very gently work our way round. We're going to grab the prong in between their base and the top. We're just going to squeeze around, and don't press too hard, otherwise you're going to squeeze one of the prongs too hard and is going to make the stones sit skew. So just gently start on each corner and then work your way around until they are seated, and that's what it looks like once you're done. Okay, so so the next step is we're going to use these side wires. Obviously we need to make sure that the stone is held in place. So I'm just going to create little loops on the side, and what I want to do is make them gradually decreasing. So just take your time with that and create one loop after the other, and you can use your tools to kind of help you bring them in again. Bring this down a bit. And how big or small you make them, it's up to you. You can kind of adjust that. And I'm going to do one more. And when you get towards the tips, kind of hold your finger over, and take your time with that, because it can be quite sort of fiddly business at this stage, because obviously everything is still kind of loose. So kind of fold this in, and then when you get to that stage, bring in a pair of pliers. You just make this a little bit smaller still, kind of like that, and you adjust this, and then we're going to bring this in and line this up. So obviously do the same on the other side and adjust it until you're happy with the look. Okay, so now I've done both sides, so just try and make it as symmetrical as you can. So what I'm going to do next is attach these somewhere so that the stone is secure. So we're going to open up these wires from the back. We're going to take the wire with the twirl, and we're going to wrap it around one of the outer wires here, like so, and that will tie this in place. You can come in at a later date, or a later stage rather, and sort of put this down. So we're going to be attaching the other wire on the other side, like that, and just don't tie anything down yet too hard. We're going to be adjusting these, so you kind of come in with the pliers and you twist this down a bit, push it down until you're happy. And then once you're satisfied, obviously it needs adjusting some more. Once you're satisfied, you kind of squish, very technical term that, squish this down to tighten everything up. That's what it looks like at the moment. Alright, so next I'm going to separate out the prongs a little bit. I've got some fine tip pliers. And I'll just come in and grab each little ray or whatever you want to call it and bend it out sideways. I'll leave the top one and I'll just bend out the others, and that just creates a little bit more detail because these prongs obviously aren't too big. So we're just going to go and do the same all round. Right, so next we've got a 20 centimeter roughly, I think it's about 8 inches of 1.6 millimeter wire. I believe this is so that's 1.3, a 16 gauge, so that would be 14 gauge if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to double check that, but I'll put it in the description anyway. So what we're going to do is we create either pear shape or circle, not sure what I'm going to do yet, and that will fit the stone. This will be kind of like a frame. Just try and make sure that this is nice and symmetrical, and then we'll just have a look and see. I want to fit this inside, so I'm just still going to decide what I'm going to do. I think I'm actually going to go with teardrop shape. That would be quite nice. So we're just going to continue shaping this until it is nice and symmetrical. So just work on that. The nicer the shape and the nicer the end result. So we're just going to carry on until we are happy with the look, and then once we've finished, we're going to be hammering that for a little bit of texture. So once we're happy with the shape, I'm just going to mark so that when we bend these over, we're going to have them where they cross over. That, so it'll make it easier to put a bend in it. Split that up. I'm going to do the same on the other side, just roughly like that, and then that's how it's going to look. And so we can hammer this now, and for that I've got my chasing hammer and my steel block, which was here a minute ago. So I'm just going to hammer at the bottom around here to make this area a little bit thicker. Just make sure everything is aligned properly. And then the way I hammer it, as I say in so many of my other videos, is you just kind of go into the direction that you're hammering in, so that the wire can expand. And really gentle hammer blows, because the harder you hit, the more the wire will actually distort. If you're gentle, it takes a lot longer to hammer, but if you're gentler, you have much more control over where the wire expands to. So when I hammer, I usually just go all the way around, and it doesn't look like there's much progress being made, but it actually does happen. You just have to be patient with it, and then it looks much smoother and will require a lot less sort of filing and cleaning up in the end. And I spend more time in the area that I want to expand most, and then I work my way up sort of around. So it's really flattening out. So obviously this is what it looks like, and the edges obviously do become a little bit uneven, but if they are too bad, we can just file them out. Basically just carry on with that until you are happy with the width and the thickness and so on. So I've done a little bit already. You can see the dents in the metal. So as I said, I try and keep it even. Sometimes you will have to readjust how they sit together. That's why I haven't attached them yet. So you kind of attach these once you're satisfied with this. The hammering will distort it. So you can see the side is much smoother, although there's some irregularities. I was hammering too hard. You can sort of file that out, and you can see the dents. So this can either be your front or your back, depending if you want any texture in your design or not. Actually, I have decided to bring this through for now. So I need to bring this up a little bit for it to fit through. There you go. Same with the other side. And now you can bring your tool back. And if you don't have any of these pliers, you can use anything else that has kind of like a similar shape. I don't want to obstruct the space in between because I want this to sit flush. Don't really know what I'm going to do with these wires yet. I just brought them through. Maybe I'll still cut them off. So holding on to them, you can maybe bend these outwards and then see what we're going to do with them. So just lay these onto the side for now, and this will still make sure that the middle sort of meets up. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So obviously once you're finished and there's some ragged edges, you can take some jeweler file or sandpaper or anything else you have available and give this a good sort of polishing and erasing all the rough edges around it. I also tend to polish this so it's high shine before I carry on, because it's much harder to buff out any scratches once the wire is attached, any other components or so make sure this is nice and polished until you're happy, and then we can move on to the next step. So what we're going to do with this now is normally I make like a little bell, but I think these wires are a bit short. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bend this forward, so decide which is the front, and then we bring this forward, and what we're going to do is just create like a loop. So I've got some bail making pliers. I actually think these are a little bit too big, so I'm going to use my round nose pliers. Oh no, actually I've got other bail making pliers which are a bit smaller. I think this is about 1/2 mil, 5 millimeters if I'm not mistaken. This is small enough. I don't want the loop to be too big, so I'm going to be using that, and I'm going to place it right at the base and go round and do the same with the other side, and that way you have equal sized loops and you can close these off. So you can either trim these wires off or do something with them. As you know me, I don't like to trim anything off, so we're going to leave them for now. And this is what it looks like so far. Alright, so I've bent these around, but I actually don't really like those, so what I've decided to do is just to cut them off. So I'm going to use a pair of pliers and try not to squeeze till I already mark the wires, which I'll have to polish out later. So I'm going to use these bent nose pliers for that. They're great. And I'm just going to bend the wire around. So that's why they're great. I've got an angle so you can grab these wires. Just going to bend these round, and I'm going to trim this off and then attach it. I'm going to do the same with the other side, and basically we just want to work these away. I thought I could do something with them, but I don't really like them for this purpose. Maybe you have different ideas, but I'm just going to cut them off. So I'm going to do the same on the other side, and then we're just going to trim them off and close them off so they're not in the way. Okay, so that's what it looks like so far. So we've got these wires on each side, so I cut it off, and I'm kind of going to try and hide this a little bit with the next weave. What we're going to do here is just create some 3x5s, and basically the way this works is going to take the leftover weaving wire, and we're going to go around the bottom wire 3 times, then around both wires twice. And the beginning might be a little bit open because there are too many gaps. I mean, the gap's too far apart, but once you get going, the gap will close off. 2, 3. I'm just going to continue, and I like to bring in my pliers here, push in the weaves a bit, and that will also help to close the gap a little bit. And then we just continue. 1, 2, 3, and we're just going to carry on until we've got a full set. Don't know how many I'm going to make it. I'll tell you that in the next step. And obviously we're going to be doing the same on the other side as well to have it symmetrical. Okay, so I've got 23 weaves on each side. You should have just enough wire. You can add in if you need to, but what we've got should be just enough to create these weaves. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold these weaves upwards and down. I'm going to try and sort of cover up a little bit of this sort of wire here. I think just going to create a little detail here, and then I'm going to possibly come around here and then come through the frame again. Maybe a bit more of a weave would have been good, but I think that's what we've got at the moment. So, and then we kind of come around like that, create a little bit of a detail with this, and you can adjust this obviously to make it a bit more sweeping, hide a little bit of this wire there. We're going to be doing exactly the same on the other side, and then we're going to be working away these wires on the side here. Right, so I've attached both sides, and now we're going to be working away with these wires here, and I'm just going to feed this one through. Do the same with this one. Just try and follow the direction, and obviously we're going to be doing the same thing on the other side as well. Like so. Just wondering if we can create a little bit of detail, shaping it round. So create like a sort of bow design with these wires like that. And this as well. Just put your finger over the direction of the wire when you're bending these back, so they can't actually move like that. So it creates like a little sort of bow effect. It's quite pretty. And then again we're going to just wind these off. I think the wires are going to come short now, and maybe this one we're going to create a swirl. So I'm going to bring in my brand nose pliers and create a sort of tapered end for squeezing and rotating at the same time. And then we're going to roll this in, if I can see what I'm actually doing. Right, there we go. You don't want any open swirls, because you don't want, these open swirls can hook on clothing and catch all sorts of things, so you want to make sure they're closed. So that's that. So we're going to be doing the same on the other side, and just try and make sure that it's symmetrical, and obviously we can also tie these off if necessary. And just finish off this piece of wire here as well. We're going to do the same and try and keep it as symmetrical as possible. So that's what it looks like so far. So I've come across and I've attached these at the bottom, and these unfortunately broke, so I couldn't really swirl it away. So next we're going to just add some details. So I've created a prong setting. I'm going to put the link for this tutorial in the description below, and I'm just going to attach it here. This was made using 0.6 or 22 gauge wire, and we're just going to use the legs of that to attach it, whichever frame. You can also use it to maybe tie off these two together, the bail sort of wire, so that they don't open up. Many things you can do, and that's how we're going to be attaching the stone. Okay, so I've added a stone, and I have used the legs of it to close off the bail here so it doesn't open. It's a good way to tie them off as well. It's nice and snug in there, and then I've put the weaves over the top. So now there's a little bit of a gap here, so if you wanted to, you could maybe pop a bead in there. I think that looks quite nice. You can use some of the remaining wire, you feed it up, and then put the bead through there, and that way you can work away some wires. And anywhere else you really want to add some beads, you could put some on the side, you could put some over the top, that kind of thing, so that actually works. So just use the remaining wires and attach your beads wherever you like. So once you're done with your piece and you're happy with it, you can oxidize it and give it a nice polish, and that's it. So I really hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button for more videos in the future, and don't forget to visit our artist group on Facebook, which is called Wire Wrappers and Metalsmiths Worldwide. There's a link below if you want to visit my website for more PDF tutorials, kits, gemstones, and other goodies. And don't forget to come and visit me on my social media. I've got Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and obviously YouTube, so there's also a link below. So it'd be lovely to see you on that social media platform. And that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.